Good evening, YouTube, and all my subscriber family, and happy Independence Day, where on July 4th, the Continental Congress formally accepted the Declaration of Independence. And how did I spend my 4th of July? By fixing one of my friend's kitchen cabinet doors. So, I'm going to go ahead and run that off to them, and yeah. Oh, you want to know how I did it? How did I fix this door? Well, I'll let you watch that right now. So the reason why I wanted to do this video in particular is because this is a type of repair work that can be useful not only in standard homes, where kitchens often have this sort of door style, but it's also common to see mostly older motorhomes, but nevertheless trailers and motorhomes and whatnot may also have door styles very similar to this one. And so I figure there may be the occasional person who has had a door fall apart, much like this one did. In this situation, I have a couple of friends, they're a married couple, and the husband happened to open up the door and it broke apart, much like you can see here. Complete accident, but as you can see, the wood is split on one of the rails, and on the back side it's split in that same section, and thankfully it is a fairly clean split, which means that I can simply take some wood glue and clamp it back together. And the wood glue, the nice thing about wood glue is that when it dries, it will adhere to the wood in such a way that it actually acts as if it is part of the wood. And that's one of my favorite things about wood. So since this was a nice clean break, if you will, I could choose to use some inset nails and nail it back together, but I wanted to get this done for them quickly, effectively, and make it look as close to the original as I could, and that's why I chose to do wood glue. When applying the wood glue on a split on the rails, as you can see that I'm doing right here, it's not looked down upon to just smear the glue, because ideally you want to get as much glue into the nooks and crannies as much as possible. And that was my intention here, and it's much easier just to get excess and clean it off before it dries than to just try to get at, like take a razor blade or something and get it in wherever you can and not make a mess. I say it's much easier just to clean up the mess than it is to be meticulous. So that's what I did here, was simply apply the wood glue where all the splits were. And there were 3 or 4 of them, and I'm not sure how well the camera actually picked all of that up. But there were quite a few little splits, but they were clean enough to where wood glue is going to be more than sufficient to take care of this issue. One thing I also noticed as I was starting to apply the clamps was I only have one 2-foot clamp. The rest are either 6-inch clamps or 12-inch clamps. And this door happens to be about 16 inches wide, which means that I would have to get creative when clamping together the two parts of the rail that fell off of the center panel itself. But there are ways of being able to make that work, and you'll be able to see later on in this video how I made that happen. But right here, as you can see, I just, after clamping together the section that of the rail that split, I just cleaned off the excess. And as you can clearly see, I took 3 clamps, got a little creative, but I was able to make sure that the 2 parts of the rail were at a proper square 90-degree angle, because the last thing I want is for any curvature or any warping to happen while the glue is in the process of drying and the rail is set in place. And I wanted to make sure to get all the pieces as close to the way they originally were when the door was built, and as flush as possible. So after the glue dried, I went ahead and took off the clamps. I gave about 45 minutes to an hour, something along those lines. Realistically, with wood glue, you only need about 15 minutes for the glue to be dry enough to handle, and about 45 minutes to be workable. And so I took off the clamps and did a quick observation and took my 90-degree tool and made sure that the rail was still in factory condition, or as close to it as possible, because this is one of your standard construction grade cabinet doors, so it's fairly cheap to begin with. But nevertheless, I wanted to turn out as close to original as possible. And I did notice some excess glue that was still on the surface. It was dry, but thankfully this stuff is water soluble, and it wasn't completely dry, so I was able to clean that up without a problem. And so the next task in getting this door to be in the condition that it used to be in is to take the wood glue and to apply glue along the edges of the center panel itself. And the reason why you want to do that, it's not absolutely necessary. And I have a feeling that when these doors were manufactured, they did not have any wood glue on the edges of the center panel to begin with. And I say that because I didn't see any evidence of any glue when it came apart, or when I saw it when it was still apart, and as I was working on it. And I was looking for some. And I'm not sure how well the camera picks this up, but as I'm applying the glue and spreading it around, I'm actually making sure that the wood glue is on the very edge of the center panel as well. Because I wanted to have as much contact with the wood glue as I could as I was going to apply the section of rail that came apart from the center panel itself. In addition, it's also important, if using this method to repair a cabinet door, it's important to apply wood glue on the inside of the rail itself, so that way when clamping the rail together with the rest of the door, the wood glue will actually hold it in place, and like I mentioned before, the wood glue becomes part of the wood itself, or at least it acts like it. It actually adds extra structural integrity to the door itself, which in turn really means that by the time the wood glue is dry and the door is finished as far as the repair goes, the section that I repaired theoretically is actually stronger than when it was first built in the factory. You'll see here I also added glue to the ends of the rail where the two ends meet. Of course, if it's the end of the door itself, if it's the edge of the door, I didn't add any glue to that portion of the rail. But I did even on the inside of the rail that was still attached to the center panel. And I applied just enough pressure after applying the rail back to the center panel. I applied just enough pressure that the rail would stay in place, and at that point I required a clamp in order to set the rail back into the position that it needed to be in. Now, this particular rail style has a curved end on it, a curved edge. So using a clamp by itself would simply not be feasible to position the rail back into its factory standard position on the center panel. So I took a scrap piece of plywood and I used it up against the rail, and so that way when I used the clamp, it would actually put most of the pressure on the plywood, and I could hold the plywood as I apply more pressure to the door itself. It worked out pretty well. Now, being the fact that I only have the one 2-foot clamp, I had to undo the clamp even though the glue was still very much wet and needed time to dry. I used the 2-foot clamp on the other end of the door that needed to be clamped together, just so I can get the rail in position. It's such a tight fit, fortunately, that once I applied enough pressure to get the rail into position on the center panel, the rail did not move from that position. So even if I had just set the rail in place and did not clamp it after that, it would have still dried in the position that I wanted it to be in. But basically what I did was I applied pressure on 3 different points of the door itself, so that way it ensures that the rail is going to be set in the position that I wanted it. And I was, to be completely honest, I was about a 64th of an inch off from where it would have been if it was factory standard, but considering the condition that it was in, I don't think they were going to be meticulous and picky like that. And they weren't when I actually delivered the door. But here you can see I'm cleaning off any excess wood glue because I want this to be a nice clean repair. And the door was already dirty to begin with because of wear and tear from 80 some years of being used. These are original doors, and they're from the World War II era, and they're in pretty good condition, all things considered, but they're still dirty. And I've been talking with my friends about refinishing their doors at some point, assuming that their landlord is okay with it. I've had to actually refinish 2 doors that got paint on them from when they had their walls repainted, and the landlord was okay with that, so I'm assuming that they're going to be okay with all the rest of the doors being redone so that they match. But that's a topic for another day. But as you can see, it's a nice, clean, flush repair. And as you can see, I decided to get another angle for the other side. And as you can see, as I applied pressure to the rail itself, using the plywood as a conjunction to make sure that the clamp would work properly, more excess glue was coming out, even after I had previously cleaned it. So thankfully this was the last little bit of excess wood glue, but nevertheless turned out to be a nice clean fix. I didn't have to do any sanding off of or shaving off of any excess wood glue. And that's the overall goal, is to be able to do that. And I will say that they were very happy with the end result of the door repair. So after I took it to them and I installed it back onto their kitchen cabinet, and of course, being the fact that it was a repair, one way to make sure that the door was not warped, and I knew it wasn't, because I took extra measures to, after all the glue was dry, to inspect it and make sure that everything was nice and straight and square. But one extra bit of insurance is to test the door opening and closing after it's installed. I know this sounds like a very simple, common sense type of thing, but it's, there's always that slight, ever so slim chance that it may be unnoticeably warped, but it was nice and flush when opening and closing the door. So they're happy, and I like making people happy. Fireworks in the background. So, just out of curiosity, for all of those who have watched this video to the ending of it, should I shave this off? I'm kind of tempted to. I'm curious. What do all of you think? Should I shave it, or should I just let it grow? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, thank you for watching. Take care. Love others as you love yourself, and I'll see you next time.